A transformer explosion at the Jebba transmission substation in Niger State, Nigeria, triggered a third national power grid collapse in just 1 week, early Saturday morning. The collapse drastically reduced the country's power supply from over 3,000 megawatts to just 47 megawatts, leaving many areas without electricity for several hours. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission expressed concern over the growing frequency of grid disturbances and has announced plans to conduct a public hearing to investigate the cause of these repeated failures.
The Commission is also moving to transfer grid management to an independent system operator as outlined in the Electricity Act of 2023. Joining us is the former Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, Sam Amadi. Good morning and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Great to have you. I think we'll first of all just get a quick assessment of, what you think our major issue is. If it is a policy issue, if it is an infrastructure issue, if it is simply government's will, that is the major problem with Nigeria's power sector.
Well, I think it's all. Primarily, it's a technical frailty. So you have a system that has low capacity, maybe low spinning reserve, a high level of unreliability. So system collapse arises from either that there's imbalance in energy supply. Maybe this imbalance arises from shortage in terms of demand supply. The system is a machine, so there must be balance, equilibrium. So if, for example, there's acute shortage, something happens, it will affect the performance of the grids. So those are some of the issues that you experience. Again, policy, yes, talk about policy. We have a very radial, difficult to manage grid and very low capacity for investment or attracting investment or even efficient management of that grid. So oftentimes, system collapses arise from failure of management in terms of managing, monitoring, maintenance, and vigilance to ensure that if there are faults, you clear them quickly. Again, you also talk about leadership. We've had more system collapses in the last 4 years. In fact, this year alone, had so many. So it goes back to the level of leadership in the sector connected to the to grid management. So I think you can see that all these factors are policy, technical frailty, and lack of managerial capability. They all interplay. The interesting thing, though, is you keep hearing the minister talk about 6,000 megawatts, 7,000 megawatts. They're going to hit it in next. That's not the point. You need some level of reliability, some improvement in reliability, in available hour for resupply, not abstract academic capacity growth. Yes, we may have 13,000 megawatts nameplate, meaning if you plate all the capacity of all our generators according to manufacturing their turbine, then we can say we have 13,000. But if you talk in terms of how many of them can ever get to the grid, you don't have less than 4,500. And then if you talk about how many times you're going to have that 4,500 effectively evacuated, distributed to homes and houses in Nigeria, probably get back to 2,800. So the capacity is not growing in spite of the political talk around improvement in installed capacity. So we are suffering because, in my view, we've had no improvement at all in real sense since 2015. I mean, improvement, is significant improvement that results in real expansion of capability. Capability is measured by what you can take from the to the transmission to distribution flawlessly. So if you used to have 3-4 collapses a year, now we have maybe 1. That's real improvement. If we used to have 3-4 hours of electricity on average, or a minimum of average of, let's say, 10 hours or 8 hours across the country, and now we have 16 hours across all customer classes, not just given by A, but everybody in the system. That's real improvement. So we really have not improved at all, in my view, in the areas that count, which is reliable, affordable, an adequate power supply to Nigerians.
I think that, if you look at the Punch newspaper, for example, it reports that the grid has collapsed 105 times in 10 years, despite $1.4 billion loans. I'll come back to talk about the, World Bank approved electricity infrastructure loans. But I think a general question that we hear often is, in layman terms, when we hear the grid has collapsed, a number of Nigerians tweet about it on X and talk about it, but don't actually know what it means or where the fault lies. You just hear stories about how there are potential cabals that benefit from Nigeria's power sector being disadvantaged, which I hope that you can speak to. But in layman terms, what would you say is the meaning of the national grid collapsing, and who should the Nigerians hold or expect some form of accountability from?
Well, in layman terms, what it means for the grid to collapse is that you have zero. Total collapse means there is zero power available. And it can happen many ways. For example, if there's a major fault and the cost of the lines, the grid, it means that even though the generators have capacity to generate power, they are supplying zero. So the system is cut off. So a good example would be this. If you have a line that carries water to their homes, and that line blows off, it is blown up, and then no more water is flowing into that line. And all the water coming in from the reservoir or from your what you call it, your water plants are not entering the line, and therefore at the end of consumption of water, there's no single drop. That is what it means to have a collapse. It means that at that moment, there is no power flowing into businesses. Our grid is cut off because of a fault. That means that nobody generates. And the thing with plants that once there's that system disturbance, the generating plants shut down. So when they shut down, it might take, even if you recover that, you control that fault, you now have to have a period of power coming gradually. So you see them say, we have zero in the network. Nobody has grid power. Then suddenly they start picking 10, 20, 30, 40, 100, 200, maybe within a time of a few hours, then the grid can come back to 100%, meaning you come back to a point where all the loads, all the water supply from different water plants can now flow into the system. So grid collapse simply means that at that point, if it's total complete collapse, it means that there's zero power in any of the distribution outlets. The distribution companies in Nigeria don't have zero power to sell anybody. Why? Because the system collapse or disturbance has cut off the grid and then shut down all the plants. There are a few plants that will cause spinning reserve. Use them to start spinning, to bring back, or black starts. They give you the black start, they start you up again. So it's like a car, knocking engine. When something, for example, once the diesel finishes, they knock. So when you put this diesel, you have to bleed it and gradually bring it back to life. That's how it works. So there's no power available to give you because the system has disrupted it and the generators have shut down, and the transmission cannot carry any energy, and discos are not supplying.
Okay, so I'm hoping that you can also help us shed some light on the electricity infrastructure loans that were given by the World Bank and the Africa Development Bank. What really have these loans been used for, and why has the power sector not yet been improved upon?
The first is that these loans are World Bank and funder support for distribution improvement. The idea here is that, look, we need quick intervention to ramp up capability in network. Part of the reason why we have collapses is that the grid, both the transmission grid and distribution grid, are very weak. And the distribution companies on their own financial profile cannot raise the required finances to quickly improve their grid. So the intervention, loans and grants is to help quick intervention to build up that resilience. But look at the problem though. If you make the first three levels, one is that oftentimes those funds are not wisely invested. So if you misinvest them, whether by corruption or whether by not identifying the real network constraint and you invest in the wrong ones, then it may not improve. That's about number two. Those investments, as they're making them, you also need to do other corresponding complementary investments or take other actions that complement that. So, for example, if you give Abuja Disco or Lagos Eco or Ikeja maybe 300 million or 500 million naira to improve their network, supply, meter, at the end of the day, the other end of it, let's say transmission is not being improved commensurately, then you're going to have system failure still because you have the meters, you have the reinforced network transformers, but the distribution, the transmission that carries that power is not optimal. So that's why we use a system approach. You have to evolve, evolution. The system needs to be almost comprehensive. You have to do end-to-end. You have to improve at all ends. You look at the vulnerability analysis, identify constraints, and treat them almost simultaneously so that the investment has complementary investment that allows improvement in quality of power supply. If you do one investment and they don't do the complementary side of it that is required to drive up performance, then you see a failed change management strategy. So I would say that part of the reason is that maybe those funds are inadequate, maybe they're not effectively and prudently used, and thirdly, maybe there's little corresponding and complementary investment in enhancing profitability and improving quality of service delivery.
All right. I also want to ask, Nigeria currently has a new Minister of Power, Adelabu. Since he got into office, have you seen any strategic moves that have been made that tell you that in the next few years we will see an improvement in the, of course, power generation, transmission, and distribution across Nigeria? Is there any possibility that, as it stands, we will be able to build the infrastructure that is necessary to be able to generate and distribute maybe 20,000 megawatts, 30,000 megawatts of electricity in the next few years?
Well, I think investments has been made, but some of them are useful. But again, inadequate. Reform needs to be comprehensive. Reforms need to be well defined. Reforms need to be coherent to work. Reforms need to be coherent to work. So that means that if you're not coherent, if you're not comprehensive and coordinated, it will not work. If in the last 8 years we've had few results from those investments, then I do not think too much hope for massive improvement if you don't improve the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are three, in my view. One is leadership that understands, diagnoses properly the problem of the sector before investment. Two, we need also to be pragmatic and efficient in those investments in the electricity network. And third, I think we also need to have a sense in which we are solving the political crisis of leadership as well, because oftentimes we've seen that efforts to improve the sector are suffered from very poor leadership at the level of political leadership, ministers, heads of parastatals. So we need to strengthen at these three levels.
All right.
Sam Amadi, thank you very much for your time this morning. We hope that we can have you join us more regularly. We, of course, wish you a very interesting week ahead. Thanks for your time once again.
Thank you very much.